breaking chaos across Britain. Starmer just lost control. The EU has officially banned UK flights, grounding thousands before sunrise. Heathrow, Manchester, Edinburgh, all paralyzed. Gate screens flashing, entry data missing. Families shouting, flights cancelled, total confusion. It's not war, not weather, not safety, it's Brussels. A full-scale EU ban hit overnight, and Starmer's government never saw it coming. Britain's airports turned into war zones, while the Prime Minister scrambled to understand why Europe just shut the skies on him. By 6 a.m, the numbers were staggering. Over 3,000 British travellers stranded on home soil. Families in tears, weddings missed, business meetings gone. Students holding tickets for study programs in Helsinki were told they couldn't board. And in every airport, the same excuse repeated like an automated recording. System error, check with your government. Except the government didn't know what to check. By mid-morning, the story broke wide. Finland had activated the EU's brand new entry-exit system, EES, a digital border control requiring biometric pre-registration for non-EU travellers. Fingerprints, facial scans, and passport data uploaded to Brussels servers before departure. The problem? Starmer's government hadn't prepared a single public notice. Airlines weren't briefed. Travellers weren't warned. Border agents hadn't even been trained. In theory, the EES rollout was meant to be gradual. In practice, Finland flipped the switch overnight. That's when the system collapsed. The EU's computers banned UK flights, and Starmer lost control of his borders. What should have been post-Brexit freedom turned into digital submission. Britain queued outside Brussels' database. Airports turned into chaos zones. Parents shouted at airline staff, students begged for answers, and news cameras rolled as gate screens blinked red in unison. Heathrow's Terminal 3 looked like a refugee camp. One woman told Sky News she was supposed to attend her sister's wedding in Helsinki, but ended up sitting on the floor with her kids, eating airport sandwiches and crying. Another man said, "They told me my passport wasn't linked to something called EES. I've never heard of it." By noon, the footage was everywhere. British citizens grounded because their data wasn't synced to an EU system they didn't even know existed. And the government's silence only made it worse. When asked about it, a Downing Street spokesperson mumbled something about unexpected enforcement measures. Translation: they had no idea. In Brussels, the European Commission shrugged. A spokesman insisted Finland was acting in accordance with EU law, adding that all third country nationals must comply. Translation: you left. Deal with it. The message was clear. Britain's problem, not Europe's. Airlines were furious. A senior British Airways official told reporters off the record, "We got the enforcement directive 48 hours before implementation. 48 hours. That's not a rollout, that's sabotage." Other carriers said they were blindsided. Some accused Brussels of weaponizing administration. Passengers weren't buying the diplomatic excuses. Social media exploded with phrases like digital border ambush and bureaucratic betrayal. Travellers described being treated like criminals for not uploading biometric data that nobody told them about. One post went viral, showing a queue of crying families at Gatwick under a caption, "Welcome to post-Brexit travel." Finnish border authorities made it official later that afternoon. In a press release, they confirmed that the system automatically flagged any unregistered UK passport. The algorithm didn't even allow human override. Refuse boarding at origin was the default command. Airlines had no choice. The EU had built an automated wall and Britain had walked right into it. Meanwhile, Brussels doubled down. A European Commission official smugly told Politico, "The United Kingdom was formally informed of EES timelines months ago through official channels." British diplomats immediately pushed back. One unnamed envoy called the statement complete fiction. He said, "Finland jumped the gun. The rest of Europe wasn't ready. They knew it, and they did it anyway." Inside Westminster, the reaction was pure chaos. The EU ban had just humiliated Britain on live TV, and Starmer was visibly unravelling. His team rushed to contain the damage, calling it an unexpected enforcement decision and promising fixes nobody believed. Every attempt to explain the flight ban only made him look more out of control. By the afternoon, leaks from Number 10 confirmed it. Starmer completely lost it behind closed doors. Furious, red-faced, shouting that no one had warned him about the EU ban. "How could we not see this coming?" he yelled, slamming papers on the table. The meltdown everyone whispered about had just become real. Opposition parties smelled blood. Nigel Farage went live on GB News calling it the surrender moment of the century. Tory MPs jumped in, accusing Starmer of handing border control back to Brussels. Within hours, Brian's Starmer travel crisis was trending across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Memes flooded timelines showing empty runways captioned, "Welcome to sovereignty." But the real damage wasn't digital. It was visual. The world watched as British citizens, the same people promised freedom of movement and global independence, stood stranded under EU law. The symbolism was brutal. Britain had left Brussels politically, but its citizens still needed Brussels' permission to move. By 5 p.m, the image dominating news feeds wasn't Starmer speaking. It was travellers trapped behind glass barriers at Heathrow, staring at departure boards that simply said, "Cancelled." By midday, Finland's move had triggered a chain reaction. Within hours, airports in Spain, France, and Italy began testing the same EES restrictions. Airlines that thought they'd escaped the chaos suddenly found their systems flashing red. Check-in counters stalled, passengers stranded again, and London's control over the crisis vanished. What started as a Finnish technical issue had turned into a continent-wide shutdown. Airlines cancelled 180 flights in 24 hours. The estimated cost, £12 million in refunds and hotel reimbursements. Heathrow's terminals filled with queues that wrapped around corners. British Airways, EasyJet, and Jet2 all filed official complaints to the Department for Transport, accusing ministers of criminal negligence. They wanted compensation for a fiasco created by political failure, not bad weather. The markets didn't wait to react. The pound dropped 0.6%. The FTSE 100 slid 38 points, and analysts called it regulatory uncertainty, code for panic. Traders said what politicians wouldn't. The EU bans UK flights and the Prime Minister is panicking. London was spinning while Brussels pressed delete. In Brussels itself, business networks that usually defend the EU turned critical. The European Roundtable of Industry released a statement calling the crisis avoidable if London had actually communicated. Behind the scenes, EU lobbyists admitted Finland's sudden enforcement was reckless, but none wanted to say it on record. It was safer to let the UK take the blame. By evening, the story had turned from logistics to symbolism. Commentators said the market reaction wasn't just about flights, it was about trust. Britain looked like a country locked out of its own trade routes, its data rejected by the same bloc it once dominated. Back home, that image hit hard. Every news channel led with footage of stranded families sleeping on the floor. Clips flooded social media, crying children, parents shouting at airline staff, attendants repeating, "We don't know what's happening." A single clip from Gatwick went viral. A nurse from Bristol, still in her wedding outfit, sobbing as she told reporters she'd missed her best friend's ceremony in Helsinki. 10 million views in 8 hours. Protesters began gathering outside Westminster by nightfall. Cardboard signs read, "Grounded by Brussels" and "Take back control for real." Drivers honked as chants echoed across Parliament Square. It wasn't just about airports anymore. It was anger, old Brexit anger, reignited and pointed straight at Downing Street. The polls landed like another punch. 67% blamed Starmer's failure to protect British travellers, saying the Prime Minister lost it instead of leading. Even Labour loyalists admitted it. The EU banned the flights, and Starmer banned himself from credibility. By Thursday, the headlines had shifted tone completely. It wasn't about policy or procedure, it was humiliation. The same Prime Minister who promised smooth relations with Europe now looked powerless against an algorithm in Brussels. And still, the chaos spread. Airline unions warned that without government intervention, the EES crisis could paralyze the entire summer schedule. Spain and France quietly announced they would review rollout options, diplomatic language for preparing their own bans. Travel companies warned that if coordination wasn't restored, the tourism sector could lose £500 million by the end of the quarter. Inside Westminster, the pressure was unbearable. The Foreign Office drafted emergency messages to Brussels, begging for talks. Finland refused to lift the restrictions without a proper data coordination guarantee. In plain English, Britain had to prove its systems could sync with EU databases. Starmer's team promised urgent clarification. The phrase became a meme within hours. By Friday morning, airline unions and industry groups staged a joint press conference accusing the government of total regulatory incompetence. They warned that the crisis could hit every EU destination within weeks. Civil servants looked terrified. The footage of travellers still stranded after 4 days said everything. Even Labour MPs began turning publicly. A backbencher told Sky News, "We need a public apology and a parliamentary inquiry." Another said, "We promise stability. This is chaos." The rebellion had begun, polite but lethal. Then came the rumour that made headlines explode. Sources claimed the King's Office had requested updates on the crisis, describing it as a national embarrassment. It wasn't confirmation, but it didn't have to be. The suggestion alone was enough. Every front page ran the same headline variation: "The Palace Watching." As the weekend arrived, Starmer vanished. No public appearances, no interviews, no new statements. His aides claimed he was reviewing diplomatic options. The country called it what it was: retreat. News anchors filled the silence with footage of him entering Downing Street late at night, refusing to answer questions. Meanwhile, stranded travellers kept posting. A man from Manchester uploaded a clip saying, "We voted for control. Now I can't even fly to my own wedding without EU permission." That video alone drew millions of comments in hours. By Sunday evening, it was over politically, even if not officially. Britain had once voted to leave Brussels to reclaim independence. Now, its citizens couldn't board a flight without a European database approving their fingerprints. Markets steadied slightly on Monday, but the political damage was permanent. The opposition rose, the public raged, and Starmer, the man who lost it after Europe banned Britain's flights, vanished from sight. What began as a border glitch ended as proof that Brexit's promise of control was an illusion. Brussels still held the keys, and Britain's leader never saw the lock.